I get the rationale, still inexcusable. The Georgia Bulldogs fall to 3-1 after a 24-21 loss to Alabama this Saturday night. The bottom line here is the Dogs are simply 3 points from being 2-0 in SEC play or 0-2. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Most of them I've talked about here on the channel. But before we get into all that, let's just take a look at what happened on Saturday night. To me, there are 2 or 3 things here that really stand out. First of all, you have to get stops when you have the opportunity. And you'll see that all these things are going to dovetail together in the end, but that's where it starts. All you have to do is look at the box score to understand that Alabama on third down, when the Dogs have a chance to get off the field, were 13 of 19 last night in Sanford Stadium. Now, I just said Sanford Stadium. Let me get this out of the way. That place was rocking, super loud. Fans, hat tip, you did a great job. The atmosphere was everything that you could have asked for. So this one's not at the fault of you. This doesn't come at your feet. You guys showed up, showed out, did a great job. This comes down to execution, youth, and experience. And the fact that I told you guys back in the spring and summer, and people didn't want to hear it, that this was looking like a 9-3 team. Hopefully they can get to 10-2 based on the coaching staff, which we'll get to a little bit more here in a minute. And this was actually more of a rebuild year than a reload year. And nobody wants to hear that because you're spoiled on recent history. But you're going to have to get all that out of your head, because this college football that we are in now is not the same college football that we were in 5 years ago. So just that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, especially fans that are new to the Georgia Bulldogs, and there are a bunch of you, but that is the reality. So let's get back to this point from Saturday night, these key points that I took away from the field, right? I could tell you lose track sometimes of how many plays a drive is or whatever that is, but 13 times Alabama converted on third down and stayed on the field. And if nothing else, they limited Georgia's offensive opportunities. So that is unacceptable. You cannot have it. I mean, that's the sort of thing that is extended. It doesn't just happen. I mean, yes, sometimes Alabama schemed them up. Sometimes Alabama won. They just flat won the play, right? But Georgia didn't help. There were open field tackling issues all over the place. When you have the top player at his position at corner on the field from a couple years ago, and he's missing tackles, and you have the top player at his position at safety from a couple years ago on the field, and he's missing tackles. I mean, this is basic stuff. You have to tackle in space. It's just the way college football is played today, and Georgia didn't do it on Saturday night, and it showed. Conversely, Georgia was only 2 of 8 on third down. So you lose the third down battle, generally speaking, you don't have a good chance to win. And Saturday night, in spite of this discrepancy, Georgia still had an opportunity to win this football game. And again, that sort of ties back into my point about how this college football is not the college football 5 years ago. Everybody across the country has problems, but they're all the same problems for the most part. Georgia's roster is better than 99% of the teams they're going to play, but it's not better by a lot. It's better by a little. And that puts a priority on all of the little things. And again, we're getting there. But Georgia's roster, Alabama's roster, Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, yes, they are better, but they're not like dominant level better like we saw in 2021 and 22. It's a different world. And that's something that every school has to wrestle with. So I've talked a lot about what a great roster manager Kirby Smart is. Frankly, and I'm not like throwing in the towel on that for this season, for this group, for this program, none of that. But frankly, the transfers that we brought in last year or this past cycle to deal with what I viewed as one of the biggest issues heading into the season, which was that second safety position, they're a miss. They're a bust. They brought in 3 safeties and not one of them played on Saturday night. Medozi played 8 snaps. They were counting on him for that pass rush, which essentially was non-existent. They were not able to affect Ty Simpson the way that I said they would have to go into the game. So far through the season, that's a swing and a miss. And when you miss, it matters in today's college football. So the first thing is the third down conversions. Absolutely cannot happen going forward. You're going to lose more games than you're going to win if you play like that. The turnover battle. Coming in, Alabama was amongst the best in the country at +6 in turnovers. Georgia was not very good. Saturday night, Dogs put the ball on the ground. Alabama recovers, gives away 3 points. In their own end, the defense bowed up, kept them out of the end zone, but they gave up a free 3 points. The difference in the game, 3 points. Now, it's not cut and dried to say that that is the difference that determined the game, but it's pretty close because, again, in spite of all their shortcomings, Georgia still had a chance to win the thing late. But another thing that Georgia didn't do on Saturday night that they had done to this point in the season was play really clean when it comes to penalties. The Dogs had been among the leaders in the country in penalties per game. But on Saturday night, they had 6 penalties for 68 yards. 3 of those penalties gave first downs to Alabama, or led directly to first downs to Alabama, which allowed them to extend those drives, which brings us back to the third down conversions. You just can't do that against a good football team. You cannot give them free opportunities. You can't keep letting them swing the hammer at the rock. It will eventually break. And that's exactly what Georgia did on Saturday night. Just can't do it. The way things went down, it's very disappointing for the Georgia fan base. Count me among that group, because you have hopes. You can see the road of how to get to where you want to go. But football, and I've said this 100 times, is not played on a video game. It comes down to matchups, all those sorts of things. And Georgia did not execute at the level they needed to win the game on Saturday night. And again, take nothing away from Alabama, especially Ty Simpson. Coming out and playing as well as he did in an environment like we saw in Sanford Stadium on Saturday night deserves to be commended. And Alabama fought. That was another question I had coming into the game. They fought. They have their own issues. I said it earlier. Everybody does. But they fought. The difference on Saturday night was that it became a coaching issue. And there are a lot of different ways we could put this, but let's just boil it down to the fourth down call. After the game, Kirby Smart laid out exactly why Georgia did what they did. They knew that if they got any yardage on third down, they were going to go for it on fourth down. That's a Kirby Smart call, period. They picked up a couple yards on third down, were short, and they already knew that they were going to go for it on fourth down. Now, my money says that you kick the field goal. You're at home, you tie the game, you take your chances. That's what I would have done. Kirby had already made his mind up, though. If we don't get it on third down and we gain anything, we're going for it on fourth down. That was the first decision. The second decision is, how do we do that? Do we run the play clock? Do we let everybody make their adjustments, substitutes, all that kind of stuff, and then we go for it on fourth down? Do we take a timeout and go for it on fourth down? Or do we go fastball, which is with tempo? Kirby said from the podium that 10 out of 10 times he would do what he did on Saturday night. They went with tempo, with a play that has worked for them in the past. This year, there's instances where it hasn't worked, but it worked for them this year. They felt comfortable with it. And then the 2 freshmen on the right side of the line, Glover, Gaston, failed to make what is one of the easiest blocks you can make LT Overton shoots through, gets a hand on Cash's foot, tackle for loss, ball game. Kirby believed in his players. His players, true freshmen having to play in this new world of college football, failed to execute. They let him down. So, are you going to blame Kirby for having faith in his players? Or are you going to blame the players for failing to execute? Because that's where it comes down. But it points to a bigger issue here. Again, I kick the field goal. That's what I do. Third down, we don't get it, I tie the game. Kirby already had his mind made up. My opinion of that judgment is that it is inexcusable. I get the rationale. I get that you trust your players. I get that you believe you've coached them up to execute. They did not execute. Whatever the reason is. Is it coaching because they failed to? Is it the moment because it's too big? They did not execute. So therefore, it's inexcusable. And it points to a bigger issue. I talked about the third down issues, getting off the field. Looking at you, Glenn Schumann. That's scheme. Yes, the players have to execute. That's always the case. But I have to look at you, Glenn Schumann. I have to look at you for 13 of 19 on third down. The thing about Glenn Schumann is that when it comes to knowing X's and O's of defensive football, he's got me outpaced by a billion miles, okay? Yes, I've sat in there and watched film with NFL head coaches. Yes, I know how to do that. Yes, I played defense. I've been around defensive football my entire life. Still, Glenn Schumann knows more about it than I ever will. But it's different in today's college football that you don't have the same game records that you had before because you can't stockpile them. You don't just win because you have the best guys. It's a lot of stuff. That's a big part of it. But there's a lot more that's involved with it. So if you're missing on key defensive linemen in recruiting, or you're missing on safeties, it shows up. I said all week, you can't let Simpson sit back there and throw the ball. He'll pick you apart because eventually he's going to find a matchup where they win. And guys just won sometimes, but they were also schemed open. So in the battle of wits between Alabama's offensive staff and Georgia's defensive staff, clearly, Georgia was outcoached on Saturday night. Let's turn it around. Let's look at the offense. Same things apply. If you don't have dominant players, then that lessens your ability to just roll your helmet out there and win. Nobody has depth the way they used to. Thank you, transfer portal. Time after time, we saw that Alabama staff was scheming people open offensively. You didn't really see that against Alabama from the offensive side of Georgia's game plan. Georgia wanted to run the football all night long, and they did. So kudos to them. But when you turn the ball over, then you take away an opportunity. And when you're not scheming people open in the pass game, then you have to really execute on the part that you are doing, which is running the football. It's because they could run the football so well that they stayed in the game. Bottom line, DC, OC, Kirby Smart. Georgia was outcoached on Saturday night. In a world where parity is dominant across the board, this matters. Coaching matters. Doing all the little things better matters more than it ever has. So when Kirby steps to the podium and he says, I believe I have the best coaching staff in America. Okay. I'll take your word for it. They better show up and win matchups like this. And that didn't happen on Saturday. Again, the portal has decimated everything across college football because players won't sit. They want to go play. That just means that the guys that you do have, as great as they might be, as much as they might love the University of Georgia, the coaches have to prepare them to be ready to win on Saturday nights, and they have to help them in every way possible to scheme them open. Sometimes guys just win. That's okay. That's part of the game. But the numbers that we saw on Saturday night say that there's more to it here. These guys have to grow up. It is a new era. Again, you have to get it out of your head that next man up is as good as the last man that you put in there. That is not the case anymore. And we saw that. You do not have a huge margin of error in these games. And when you make mistakes like missing tackles, when you make mistakes like committing penalties that extend drives, it all adds up and it matters. Personnel decisions, who's on the field, matters. So coaching matters more than it ever has. And right now, in the immediate history of what just happened last night against Alabama, you have to say that Georgia, even with a 3-point loss in a game that they could have won, failed. And that's why they lost. Got to turn the page, move this thing forward to take on Kentucky in Athens next week between the hedges. I'm looking forward to it because we got no time to worry about what happened last night. Those two teams could meet again. They might not, but they certainly could. I don't think that as we look down through the rest of the year, any of us know anything about what's going to happen. Ole Miss looks great at home. They look like a real threat. Texas, if they figure it out, you know that they are. So, Dog fans, my advice would be don't take anything for granted moving this thing down the road. Just understand that every game, every play, every coaching decision is highlighted and it matters. I told you this season would be fun, but you better make sure you stay hydrated and take your blood pressure medicine because none of us can tell you exactly what's going to happen the rest of the way. Strap in because it's going to be a wild ride. Go Dogs!
Told him, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told him.